Have you ever wondered how a machine can see right inside your body? Create a super detailed 3D map of everything in just a few seconds? Well, that's a CT scanner for you. But it wasn't always as fast, not even close. Today, we're going to trace the incredible journey of how this machine went from a slow, clunky contraption to the medical marvel we have today.
Seriously, it feels like something out of science fiction, right? A complete three-dimensional picture of your insides, all generated in less time than it takes to brew a cup of coffee. But this amazing speed isn't magic. It's a result of decades and decades of brilliant engineering. Let's really see just how far we've come.
And here it is. This is the one. The very first CT scan image ever, from back in 1973. I mean, look at it. It's blurry, it's pretty low res, and to get this single, flat slice of a brain, the patient had to lie perfectly still for more than 5 minutes. 5 minutes for one picture. So the question is, how on earth did we get from that to where we are today?
Well, for the engineers working on this, the whole quest really boiled down to 3 key things. First, speed. They had to get the scan done way faster. Second, resolution. They needed to make the picture sharper, more detailed. And third, simplicity. They had to make the machine's movement way more efficient. Every new generation of scanner was basically another step toward mastering these 3 goals.
Okay, so let's dive into the very beginning, the first 2 generations. This was an era defined by a method called translate-rotate. Yeah, it was methodical, and man was it slow. But for its time, it was absolutely revolutionary.
So how did this whole thing even work? Well, that first generation scanner used a single, super thin X-ray beam, like a pencil. It would scan across the patient, that's the translate part. Then the entire machine would physically rotate by just 1 degree, and then scan all the way back. It had to do this 180 times just to build up one single slice of the final image. You can probably see why it took so long.
And how long exactly? Up to 5.5 minutes. Just think about that. For one slice. Can you imagine trying to hold your breath or just stay perfectly still for that long? It was an unbelievably slow process.
So here's the deal. On the plus side, that little pencil beam was actually great at reducing stray radiation, or what's called scatter. But the trade-offs were just massive. The scan time was, well, enormous. The mechanical motion was super complex and jerky, and the final image quality, kind of poor, at least by today's standards. It worked, sure, but it was really just the first step on a very long road.
So, of course, engineers immediately got to work on that speed problem. And the solution they came up with for the second generation was pretty clever. Instead of just one pencil beam, they used a narrow fan of beams and a whole row of about 30 detectors. This meant it could grab way more data with every single pass.
And the result of that? Well, the scan time for a single slice dropped from over 5 minutes all the way down to just 20 seconds. I mean, that's a huge leap forward, but you still had that clunky stop, scan, rotate, scan motion. That fundamental problem was still.
And that brings us to the next massive leap. We're talking about the rotation revolution. This is where things really start to speed up.
The third generation did something absolutely brilliant. It just got rid of the translate part completely. No more back and forth. Now, a wide fan beam and a whole curved arc of hundreds of detectors just spun around the patient in one smooth, continuous 360-degree motion. It was a total game changer.
And the impact was incredible. Data for a whole slice could now be collected in just a few seconds. This design was so effective, so revolutionary, that it's still the foundation for most of the CT scanners that we use in hospitals all over the world today.
But you know how it is. You solve one problem and a new one pops up. With hundreds of detectors all spinning together, if just one of them was slightly off, even by a tiny bit, it would create the exact same error at every single angle as it rotated. The result? A perfect circle in the final image, a flaw that they called a ring artifact.
So the fourth generation was basically engineered specifically to fix this ring artifact problem. The idea this time was to have only the X-ray tube rotate, but inside a complete stationary circle of over 4,000 detectors. Since the detectors weren't moving anymore, it was way easier to keep them all perfectly calibrated, which got rid of those annoying rings.
So, up to this point, we've been talking about capturing the body one slice at a time, kind of like taking a bunch of individual photos. The next great leap was to move from that to essentially shooting a continuous video, capturing entire volumes of the body all at once.
Right. So before, the process was what they called step and shoot. The table would move the patient into position, the machine would scan one slice, stop, and then the table would move again for the next one. But helical scanning, that changed the whole game. Now the patient moves smoothly through the scanner while the gantry just spins continuously. So instead of separate slices, it captures data in a continuous spiral, kind of like peeling an apple in one single long strip.
And you might be wondering, what made this continuous spinning possible? Well, it was a surprisingly simple-sounding invention called slip ring technology. Basically, these are special rings that let power and data get to the rotating part without any physical cables. So the gantry could just spin and spin and spin, forever without ever getting tangled up. A simple solution that unlocked a massive breakthrough.
Now, when you combine this spiral method with multiple rows of detectors, what we call multi-slice CT, the advantages were just incredible. Scans became so fast that doctors could image entire organs in a single breath hold, and that meant you got way sharper, high-resolution images with almost zero blur from patient movement. Okay, so that brings us pretty much up to the modern era, where we have these highly specialized scanners. They're designed to solve very specific clinical problems, pushing the boundaries even further than ever before.
So you have the 5th generation electron beam CT, which is just wild. It has no moving parts at all. It uses an electron gun to create the X-rays, making it fast enough to get clear pictures of a beating heart. Then you've got the 6th generation, which uses 2 separate X-ray sources at the same time. This gives doctors even more information about what different tissues are made of. And we're not stopping. The 7th generation is already in development, promising even more incredible detail with new flat panel detectors.
So when you step back and look at the whole journey, it's just amazing. We went from 5.5 minutes for one blurry slice in 1973 to scanning an entire organ in a single breath hold by 1989, and then to scanning the entire body in under a minute by the early 2000s. The pace of innovation has just been absolutely incredible.
This whole quest for a faster, clearer picture has taken us from minutes down to milliseconds, and from a single blurry slice to these stunning 3D volumes. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? As we keep pushing the limits of speed and resolution, what new secrets about the human body will the next generation of scanners